he questions Jesus. And the ninth violation, a prisoner could be asked no questions which would incriminate him in a capital crime. It's kind of like pleading the fifth back then too. They had a law against doing that. Now that's just a quick list of many of the laws that were broken when Jesus was tried. Now, what were they trying him for? Breaking the law. And here they broke all of these laws. So, but see, Jesus knew exactly what was happening. Now look what had happened in verse 19 as his trial begins. Let's go down to verse 19 there. And it says in that 19th verse, the high priest then asked Jesus of his disciples and of his doctrine. Jesus answered them, I spake openly to the world. I ever taught in the synagogues and in the temple where the Jews also resort, and in secret have I said nothing. And so when Jesus said this, when he said, the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples, about his teaching, and Jesus says there in verse 20, well, I spoke openly to the world. Just openly. I didn't hide anything. I've always taught in the synagogue of the temple where the Jews come together. He said, I have said nothing in secret. Then in verse 21, he says, why question me? Why askest thou me? Ask them that heard me, which I have said unto them. Behold, they know what I said. He said, you're breaking the law by questioning me. I'm not the one who's to be questioned. You need to go ask those who heard me. Surely they know what I said. And he just reminded the high priest's father-in-law about the law. Now, what did they do to him? Well, going on to verse 22, it says, and when he had thus spoken, one of the officers which stood by struck Jesus with the palm of his hand, saying, answerest thou the high priest so? So when Jesus said this, one of the officials just hauled off and struck him on his face and said, is this any way to answer the high priest? Going on to verse 23, Jesus answered him, if I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if I've spoken well, why spitest thou me? Now Annas had sent him bound unto Caiaphas the high priest. And so he said, if I've said something wrong, then you testify to what's wrong. If I've spoken the truth, why did you strike me? And see, that teaches us what Jesus meant when he said we're to turn the other cheek. He was slapped on the cheek, and he literally turns the other cheek. He doesn't respond in anger. He doesn't slap back, and neither does he say, I was wrong. He doesn't back down. He has this continued willingness to say, I was right in what I said. But he continues to say it with humility, without anger or malice toward the person who slapped him. That's what it means to turn the other cheek. Some people think turn the other cheek means you just let people run all over you. That's not what it means. Other people think it means that you get ready to throw a right hook at them. That's not what it means either. Turning the other cheek is the ability to still love an enemy. That's what it means to turn the other cheek. Jesus shows us that even when you love an enemy, it's okay to tell the truth. Don't back down on the truth. Jesus in love says, I'm standing for the truth. Why did you strike me? Annas knew he was right. So notice in verse 24 what he says there. Now Annas had sent him bound unto Caiaphas the high priest. So he sends him still bound to Caiaphas the high priest. Now we're not going to hear that story from John of that trial and all the things that happened in that trial. It would have been right across the street, literally, to go for him to go to the other trial. And it would have been before the greater Jewish court, the greater Sanhedrin. Now, the lesser court of 26 men, they couldn't rule on a capital crime. There were 73 men in that court. And they were all there that night, and they were supposed to be who would have ruled on and condemned Jesus on this capital offense. Now, it's interesting, as you look through the trials, Jesus looks more and more innocent, and those who are trying him are looking more and more guilty. So there on your outline, this was a trial that proved the innocence of the accused and the guilt of the accusers. It was unfair in every way. Is there something about you that burns you up when things are unfair like that? When things aren't done fairly, there's something within us that just gets this anger going. I think so many times we're so focused in on the unfair things that we think that gets God out of the picture. Look what those people did. He can't do anything any longer. God's out of the picture now. Somebody can treat you unfairly or they can lie about you. It doesn't keep God from treating you righteously. Don't forget that. The truth is, life isn't fair. We looked at that several weeks ago. It's a little lesson in life. You need to learn these things now. When life isn't fair, you and I need to remind ourselves God always is fair. And when it seems like the books aren't being balanced in this world, we need to remember this isn't where the books are balanced. It's going to happen in heaven at the end. And that's when God will make everything right and just and fair. So God takes these unrighteous, unholy things that are done, and he uses them through his perfect power to get Jesus right where he wants him, right when he wants him, the cross of Calvary. Now there's a verdict in all of this. The louder they shout, the more accusations they bring, the more they try to twist things, the more innocent Jesus looks just by being silent. Just by being silent. And so that's what he wants us to understand. In verses 28 and 29 there, if we could go to that, Jason, if we might. In the 28th and 29th verse here of this chapter, it says there, then led they Jesus from, it says, then led they Jesus from Caiaphas unto the hall of judgment. It was early, and they themselves went not into the judgment hall, lest they should be defiled, but they might eat the Passover. Now, when they brought Jesus to Pilate, Pilate says, what charges have you against this man? What are you arresting this man for? And verse 30, they said, well, we would bring him to you if he were a malefactor, if he weren't guilty. Now, does that make sense if you know human nature? Does it make any sense at all? Well, no. Jesus is on trial in my life and your life. You and I can look at these religious leaders and think, praise God, I'm not like them. But I think the better thing to think is to recognize how easily we could be like that. They were just trying to protect what they thought was right. That's all they were trying to do. They were protecting the status quo. They were protecting their comfort, their power. If you say you never tried to do that in your life, you probably need to think back a little more. We all struggle with that. Now, why these men did what they did, the reason they rejected Jesus is the reason that most people reject Jesus. You might think it was for intellectual reasons, but that's not why most people reject Jesus. It's not they sat down and figured out all the intellectual reasons why they think this about the Bible or about Jesus. You might think it's for personal reasons. That they've known a Christian that disappointed them, or they've been hurt by a church. Sometimes it is, but that's not the main reason that people reject Christ. The main reason that people reject Christ is we don't want to change. That's why we reject Christ. That's why even as believers sometimes we reject his work in our lives and we don't want to change. So we hold him at arm's length because we know if we let him into our lives, he's going to make some changes. And they're going to be for the better. A part of our brain tells us that, but there's something inside of us that says, I don't care. I don't want to change. I'm comfortable where I am. That's why we reject Jesus. That's why they did. That's why we do. If I want to grow, I'm going to have to face that. God has been orchestrating a lot of things in your life recently. And if you want to grow, then you're going to let him change you through those things. If you don't want to grow, you're going to reject Christ by blaming others, excusing, justifying, instead of just saying, Lord, it's not about other people, it's about me. What is it about me that you want to change? If I don't like it any more than you do, but I'm going to have to face those things, that he wants to change my life. And so he brings these things into my life. He brings wrong things into my life, just like he did with Jesus, because he has a plan for our life. And he wants us to come to that place where we say, Lord,